Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Phoblographer's Inside the Photographer's Mind. This week we're joined by Yekaterina Gyadu. She's a New York-based documentary, portrait and wedding photographer. She's also a self-confessed introvert, so we're very lucky to have her to agree to speak with us for this week's episode. We've got a lot to get through and you're going to enjoy it from the start till the finish, so stick with us. Guys, just while I've got you, please do subscribe and share the podcast. Also, if you're watching via YouTube, then leave us a comment below. Let us know what you think. Hit a like button and we can get this out to more and more people as the weeks go on. Okay, let's get into it.
Yeka, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm okay. I had a little bit of a moment yesterday. I got detained by Mexican immigration for 12 hours.
Oh my God, what?
Yeah.
Why?
Well,
That's insane.
I was traveling and I was doing a bit of photography and there was a little piece of paper that I left at home and they decided that they would penalize me for that and they detained me. So,
Wow.
But other than that,
That's crazy. I mean, I feel like that's something a photographer has to look out for.
honestly, yeah. I mean, and they took my camera away from me. They
Oh,
did a lot
wow.
of it, and they took my phone and everything. And I got put in like you see those camps on the television
Yeah.
with migrants. I was with them and great people. I mean,
Wow.
with my limited Spanish and their lack of English, we still managed to have a good time. But anyway, it's not about me as much as.
Well, I'm glad you're okay now, and
Thank
I'm sorry
you.
they took your stuff away.
What have you been up to photography-wise? What have you been shooting recently?
A few different things. I'm honestly just like in freelance mode right now, so been taking a few different jobs. Most of them are portraits, but I've been doing a few events, like some wedding celebrations, or just like company parties and things like that.
Nice.
Sometimes I'm just like, I'll do things for just a little bit of more cash, but mostly just portraiture right now.
Do you enjoy freelancing?
I do. I love creating my own schedule. I'm not a full-time kind of person. I tried working the whole Monday through Friday, 10 to 6 or whatnot, and it just like wasn't my vibe. So, yeah, I like, deciding when I get to wake up and when I go to sleep and, just kind of just creating that schedule for myself. The only downfall is, not knowing when your next gig will be, but it happened. It just works out on its own. I have no idea how, but it always works out somehow.
Do you find it that, I mean, I freelance as well, and I understand what you mean. I was never the 9 to 5 or the 10 to 6. I was quite a rebellious character, so it didn't work for me. But you say about kind of the uncertainty of freelance photography, but do you kind of find it thrilling as well? That kind of like, you got to keep going to survive. Do you enjoy that part of it?
Oh, yeah, totally. Sometimes I do. Other times I'm like, okay, I need to like pay my rent and figure out, how I'm going to survive. But definitely I find excitement, I think, when I do find a gig and I'm like, see, like, I always worry, but then something comes up and it's just like someone was looking out for me in certain moments and just like,
The universe.
getting that email that's like, hey, are you available like this 3-day, production? Because I'm a photographer, but I also do like assisting work and production assisting. So, and those gigs are the ones that usually tend to save me. So it is always nice to see that there's people still out there with work and who are thinking of you.
Especially at this time.
Yeah.
With the old panny.
Yes,
the old pandemic.
exactly. Yeah.
Did you get hit hard by that?
I did. So this has actually been my first year working as a freelance photographer full time. Before I was working part-time for a wedding photography studio doing a lot of post-production things, and so things like social media, editing the galleries, just like client relations, vendor relations, things like that. And then I started doing that full-time right before the pandemic hit because I was just like, I'm just gonna have to jump into it because I need something that's not as wishy-washy, because at the time it was really hard for me to get photo gigs. But then I don't know, after the pandemic, once things started opening back up, I guess I just started like putting myself more out there, and then work just started coming my way from that. So I have no idea how it happened, but I guess I use a lot of social media to help me out with that.
How did you get started with photography? You say you've been doing it freelance for a year, but how long have you actually been making images? How did that story begin, and what was it like?
So it's hard to say, because I'm just one of those people that, I've been doing it since I'm young, quote unquote. I just like always had a camera, and I look back at like old photo albums, and I was taking photos of my friends in like middle school. So I just have like photo albums of all these photos. I've just like taken portraits of people in school. So I feel like I've always been into photography. I think I just didn't realize it was a passion, or like it could be a career, until maybe about high school. I took a art class, and she had different speakers come in and talk to us about different careers in the art world, and one of them was a National Geographic photographer. And after I heard her speak, I was like, that's what I want to be when I grow up. Like work for National Geographic. But then when I started college, I still was uneasy about it. I was like in different majors, but still taking, photo classes for fun as minors. And then I changed my junior year of college. I did the flip. So then after I graduated, I kind of dived into the wedding photography industry, just because I was like, where can I make, the most finances?
Yeah.
So I would say professionally, I started right after college-ish, because I was still kind of doing more documentary work for myself on the side, just walking around with a film camera and just trying to capture different shots and moments of the city. But yeah.
With wedding photography, I don't envy wedding photographers. I have a lot of respect for them.
Yes.
Because right after war photography, I think the hardest to do is you've got wedding just underneath there. You've got war, then wedding.
Yes.
And I say that in kind of jest, but it really is an intense kind of space to be in and try and create. How do you manage the stress that comes with kind of not wanting to do it at the best of your abilities, dealing with drunk people who have no regard or respect for what you're trying to do? Like, how do you approach a wedding shoot?
Yeah. So the thing is, I started working, like I mentioned, as in post-production. So when I started, I was interning because I wanted to learn more about the wedding industry and how it works and what I need to do. So I interned for a year for one studio, and then I started freelancing for another studio, and I was with them for like 5 years. And so that involved a lot of being in the studio, as well as being an assistant to the photographers. So that's where I learned a lot of how, basically the ins and outs of a wedding. It's like how to approach it, how to plan it, how to handle yourself when you're there. And I will say it has I definitely changed my mind. I do respect and love wedding photography. And the reason why I fell in love with it is because I do love more of like a documentary, photojournalistic type of photography. But it's a lot. And it is a very, almost like a capitalized kind of industry, I believe, in my opinion. Yeah. So whenever I do weddings, I usually tend to go for things that are very more like low-key, small guest list, or people that are eloping, or just going into the courthouse and, getting it done, and they just want photos after. I do try to keep it very, very small, because I do want it to be more intimate. So when I approach it, I tend to usually attract those kind of clients. I'm not really that into bigger weddings, but I will totally assist one and help the photographer out. But it is like a very hard thing to do.
And your background, so, is Russia and Ghana, is that correct?
Yes.
Two very different places and two different cultures.
Yes, they are.
Do you think you get influence from either side in terms of how you make images?
I don't think so. I'm like the only real photographer that I know of in my family, and in my family, line that I'm aware of. I was always traveling to Russia to visit my family with my mom and my sister, and I was always taking pictures while I was there, but just like not even thinking about it. Like I always just had my camera. I was always begging my grandmother to get me the newest camera, or like to just get me a more decent camera than I already had. So looking back, I would say I definitely have and I'm grateful for this because I have so many photos of just like memories. And so I think with that, like photography is so important to me because it is about making memories for me and capturing moments, because I get to look back and kind of reminisce on those things and keep them forever. And so I think I bring that a lot into my work. So it's like, even though I am working like a party or an event, or I'm taking a portrait of someone, it's almost like I'm capturing this moment for them, capturing this memory for them. And then they get to just keep this and hold on to it for, if they take care of it, they get to keep it forever.
You make a good point, because one of the things that I enjoy most about photography is, as much as I enjoy getting, respect and love from other people, I love the relationship I have with my own photographs. I love sometimes, every now and then, just delving into the archives, putting a bit of music on, and just kind of just going through and being like, hey, yeah, my life's pretty cool at times, to be fair. It's quite therapeutic. Do you see any therapeutic value in kind of looking back at your old work?
Oh yeah, absolutely, 100%. I do, and I do it. I try and do it a lot just to like keep organized and keep my website updated. Like I feel like I've been changing my website within just even the past 2 years. It has changed so many times because I'm always looking back and I'm like, oh, I like this photo better, or like I like these I like these ideas better. It's almost like I look back and I start to make little projects out of all the photos I take. Like I'm like, oh, like there's a pattern happening here. So it almost becomes its own story about, just the things I photographed in my life.
I was looking at your galleries, and I saw, you shot in Russia and Ghana, obviously.
Yeah.
What was each experience like in terms of making images in those two countries, and how did they differ? Like, what was the experience like from a photography standpoint?
I would say, well, the biggest difference for me personally was I've been to Russia so many times. I was definitely more connected with Russia growing up. But Ghana, I was there when I was younger, but I hadn't gone in 20 years. So those photos were just, I've been there for the first time since 20 years. So I was kind of taking it all in. But I would say in Ghana, people are way more friendly and open to getting their photo taken. They're all about it. Like I can walk around and just like, if I want to take a picture of someone, they won't feel any way about it. But in Russia, I feel like it's much harder. It's like if I don't know the person, I'm not going to take a picture of them because most people don't like their picture taken in Russia. So that was very interesting. And I remember being on the train, like just taking a picture of like the train experience. And my friend was like, be careful because Russians like do not like random people taking their pictures. And I was like, okay, perfect. But it was easier for me just because I am half Russian. So I have family and friends there. So they take me to places. We, hang out, do things together. That is not just like a tourist thing. So I guess I get advantage of seeing different elements of Russia, which make it easier to kind of capture.
I think that's something kind of social documentary, street candid photojournalists have to kind of get used to, is that sometimes you'll go to some places and it'll be like no one cares. Like New York, for example, no one cares. They're used to it.
Exactly.
You'll go to other cultures where they like it, and then you'll go to, say, somewhere like Russia, where I personally haven't been, but I've been to Balkan countries, lower down in Eastern Europe, and they're kind of similar in how they receive strangers making their image, and it's kind of a shock at first because you're like, oh no, I'm not used to this kind of adversity. You just go about your day, pretend I'm not here. And it's how do you kind of overcome that? How do you adapt to that? Are you the kind of person who's like, nah, I'm just going to do it anyway, or do you adapt to the environment that you're in?
I'm honestly not that person. I would say I'm a little bit more on the introverted side, and I love street photography. I think that was first kind of photography I really fell in love with, and I was like, I want to be a street photographer, but it kind of just turned into documentary photography because I'm not that kind of person that like will get in your face and like try and catch, you know, this moment, which some people are very good at. And I watch some street photographers and I give them so many props because I don't know why, but I'm more of like a stand back and take a shot, or like if I see something, then I'll take it. But I don't like to get, and I think because I also don't like being in front of the camera, so every time I see a camera in front of my face, I'm always like turning my head because I don't want my photo taken. So yeah, I'm more of just like a stand back and take the photo instead of get in your face. And even in a lot of my documentary work while I'm in Russia and Ghana, like most of the people in my photos are people I know or people that, you know, I've met. It's very rare for me to really approach anyone and, you know, ask them to take their portrait unless it's like an event or things like that. But yeah, when I'm in Russia, especially in Russia, it's just, I'm more of like a, let me take the scene in and capture it that way.
So did you grow up in the States?
I did. We moved here when I was 6, so I grew
Okay.
up in the States, yeah.
So kind of out of those three, and I know you've not been to Ghana as much as Russia and obviously the States, but where do you kind of feel most at home?
Good question. It's funny you asked this too because I'm actually working on a personal project and it's going to be a photo series just talking about the story about being half Russian and half black and half African in my case. And that's just been a question that I haven't been able to answer, and so I started just calling myself hybrid because I have a home in each one of those places. The first answer that comes to mind would be Russia, but I just like didn't grow up there, so it's hard to call that my home because my home base feels more American.
Yeah.
But then it's like I also lived in Ghana when I was really younger, so you know, if things happen differently, I could have ended up being there. You know, it's just, so I just call myself a hybrid home base.
And I think that's a good thing as well. I mean, you know, maybe the question I asked was a little bit loaded. I don't think there necessarily has to be an answer of one or the other. You know, if you feel kind of a certain feeling towards each part at a certain time in a certain place, then
yes,
that makes up all of you, really. But this kind of project, it's a photography project, right?
Yeah.
That you're currently working on.
Yeah.
Will that involve you being in front of the camera?
It will. It will involve me. I will say I've been working on this skill of being in front of the camera. I think especially because I started doing portraits a lot more. I've kind of been working on directing other people, so I kind of take what I tell other people and give it to myself. To make myself more comfortable in front of the camera, just like, because I feel like posing is such an important thing when, you know, you want to make yourself look good. And sometimes people freeze up and they just stand there, and you just have to be like, okay, like loosen up, move your shoulders, you know, move your head, angles, all that good stuff. But I will be taking self-portraits. I've taken a few, but they've just been for fun. But I'm planning on doing a more serious one soon.
And I think it's useful as well because I've done a bit of portraiture over the years. Excuse me, and I like you for a lot of time was not comfortable in front of the camera, and I kind of had this moment where I was like, and you'll know about this because sometimes you may shoot people who are like, I'm a bit, you know, nervous, and then it's your job as the photographer to get them comfortable. And I thought to myself, how can I be here telling people to love themselves, to, you know, you look great and all that stuff when I go back home and I can't put myself in front of the camera. And I found just through doing self-portraits, you know, I learned to love myself. And now whenever any of my friends have got a camera, I'm like, don't be forgetting about me because I'm ready. You know?
Yes.
I'm ready. But yeah, it's when do you expect that project to come out?
Oh gosh, I have no idea right now. I've kind of just been talking about it, kind of working on it. I do feel very restless about it recently, so I do kind of want to start picking it up and getting out there. But a lot of it has been, finding a few people because I was going to start with myself and my family, but getting my family to interview them and get their portrait taken because they're in Connecticut, so that's been a hassle. And they don't like being in front of the camera, so they're like, "Oh, next time we'll do it." But I've also met a few other people who are half Russian, half Black, African American, or African, and so I've been interviewing them. Also doing a small little podcast with a friend.
Nice.
Yeah. So I have a few and it's just like a lot of virtual photo shoots that I've been trying to figure out how I'm going to make that work. So it's been a lot in process, but hopefully by the end of this year for sure, I'll start. And I think it's going to be an ongoing thing. Like I want to release it with the stories that I have and then continue looking for people who relate to the story and kind of just share what they have to say.
For anyone listening that's maybe not got with the times, shall we say, I say that politely, and is scratching their head thinking, what the hell is a virtual photo shoot? What is this new phenomena I now have to get used to?
Right.
What is a virtual photo shoot? Can you tell them?
Yeah, so it's a photo shoot over either FaceTime or Zoom, or what I use an app called Close. So it's just, you can't meet the person in person, and it started a lot when, COVID was very big. A lot of photographers, who still wanted to shoot, they would just do it virtually. And a lot of the people that are, involved in my project, they don't live in New York, so I have to kind of speak to them over some voice video.
That must be difficult.
Yeah, it was difficult at first, but this app that I found has helped a lot. But it is hard. It is hard because you're not there to kind of move around and get different angles. You kind of you basically have to speak to them and be like, okay, like take 3 steps back and, maybe like turn your body a little bit. Let me see what it looks like. So it's difficult, but it's if you can't meet with them, that's what you have to do sometimes.
And are you doing, because you shoot a lot of film, right?
Yes.
It's exclusively film?
It's not. If I can meet them in person, then yes. But if it's virtual, then I'm doing the digital virtual shoots. But everyone that I've shot in person, like my father and I do have met somebody that lives in Brooklyn. I've done only film for them.
Yeah, I was spending quite a bit of time with your photography, and I was just the more I looked at it, I was just falling more and more in love with it. It's just got a really nice simplicity about it. And that's not to say it's basic. Please don't misconstrue it as basic. It's just got really nice, a positive vibe to it. Even from because you see a lot of documentary work, and whilst it's important, sometimes you look at a few images and you're like, this is making me hate life because it's showing me the bads of the world. And whilst you focus your lens on important topics, I've seen there's stuff on LGBT on there and your past, but you've found a way of telling important stories in a way that's pleasing to look at, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
What was the kind of why film? Why film photography and not digital?
Well, I got into film in college. That was part of the criteria is to take film classes if you're doing photo. And I don't know, I guess at first I just fell in love with the quality of it and the way it looked. And it was just like something you can't achieve with digital. Like even if you tried really hard, you just can't. And I just love the idea of going out and taking, shooting a whole roll and then getting it developed and waiting to see what happens. And then when you get it back, you're like, oh my God, these, like, you forget what you even photographed. And then you're like, oh yeah, like these are so amazing. And I remember I took like a color class and I went to the Pride Parade in NYC. And I just had my 35mm camera and I was taking photos. And then to this day, I remember when I got those photos back and I was like, these are probably I'm so proud, the most proudest photos I've ever been. And so I was like,
really?
Yeah. It was just like most of like 90% of all the shots I took, I was really happy with. And I was just like, I
That's
don't think I would
amazing.
have gotten this if I had my digital camera. And with digital, you're just like constantly clicking and clicking and clicking. But with film, you kind of just have to wait and really like think about what you're about to capture next.
I I think that's a good point because I shoot digital because I'm impatient, and I'm impatient, and honestly as well, you know, and I'm comfortable admitting this. I'm not even sure I have the. I'm sure I could get there, but in this moment, I don't have the skill set to shoot film. It's a completely different world. I've tried to shoot film. My friend who's had digital cameras, film cameras, sorry, I've used them, and we've got the images back, and I'm like, yeah, I'll just stick to my Fuji. You can,
Yes.
you can do. But you say you've got. What camera are you using exactly? What have you got? What's in your collection?
Oh, I have a few that I'm using right now. I have a Mamiya medium format RB67. I have a Hasselblad medium format 500C, and then I have a bunch of point and shoot cameras that I just like flip flop between, which I would recommend because they're so easy to use. Contacts and Nikon. So I'm kind of starting a collection. I found the love for collecting film cameras. So
Nice.
yeah.
And do you have many lenses as well, or are they
No,
all?
just right now I've been working on getting the cameras because they're so expensive, especially the medium format. So now that I'm feeling like I'm closer to my goals of the cameras I wanted. So eventually, yeah, I do want to like upgrade some lenses and stuff. But right now, I'm pretty happy with just what I have because I do both digital and film. So depending on what I'm shooting, sometimes just one lens for the film is good enough for me.
And I think that's another side. The cameras are expensive, but then the film, the developing,
Oh yeah.
it's not the cheapest thing that someone
No.
can do. Do you think in that kind of way though that love for shooting film gives you the fire with your freelancing? Because I know you've got to pay rent and food. That's as
Yeah.
humans, that's most important. But we're photographers. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Like sometimes we're like, I mean, do I really need to eat?
Yeah, I
That
know.
role of.
Yes.
But do you think kind of that passion drives you to kind of keep earning, keep getting the gigs, and keep funding that what clearly is a passion?
Oh yeah, 100%. Definitely keeps me going. And it's like if I'm not working, I'm pretty much always working because it feels like I'm not on set. But it's like if I'm at home, I'm like doing some editing or like doing some archiving, trying to figure out what I can. I've been using Instagram to my advantage and just trying to post more work on there just so that people see more of my work and would want to book me more. So I'm just like constantly always thinking about the next thing with
Nice.
photography. Yeah, like what I
Do
can
you
do
do
next.
much retouching with the film work as well?
Not too much with the film, just like little adjustments. If it's a portrait and there's like, a hair fly away or like a very noticeable blemish, then I will go in and fix it. But most of the film is just very, very light adjustments. And honestly, most of my work is very light. I don't like heavy retouching or editing, so I like to keep it very simple. And I think everyone is beautiful, so I prefer my clients to make retouching requests if they have any serious ones.
And when they do that, how does that make you feel when they say, "Hey, can you change this about me?" How as someone who's clearly more of the everybody is beautiful in their own different way. We don't need to start. And I agree with that. I hate this retouching, especially in portraits where it's like, "Can you make me a
Yeah,
different person?" It's like, how about we make you love yourself? So when you hear a client say,
yeah,
"Do this," if it's beyond the odd bit of hair in the face or something,
right.
how do you feel and how do you react to that?
I mean, I totally get it because I know if it was me getting my picture taken, I'm sure I would have, a few requests. But um, I mean, most of the times it's pretty simple and it's understandable. Like, oh, it's like there's even if it's like some small like a wrinkle in my shirt, or like there's a pimple on my face that I want to get rid of that like I just didn't see. I have to like zoom in. I'm like, oh yeah, there it is. But most of the time, no one has ever asked me anything outrageous. But if they have, then I do kind of talk through with the person about, trying to keep it as natural as possible. And I'll even maybe do a draft or like two different options where I'm like, this is where I would go, but this is like pushing it too far, and this is my opinion. I feel like B is too far, but A is how far I would go. Let me know your thoughts, things like that. Because also I feel like when I'm editing, it's also representing my work. So, and I think every photographer hates this. It's like when you send your work to somebody and they put a filter on your image, and you're like, that's not what I did, but okay.
I think people should be sent to prison for that. I think that's minimum 5 years.
Yeah. And
5 years.
I try not. A lot of people. I mean, it's definitely lessons, but people still sometimes do, and I'm like, it's just only annoying because then people will think that's what your work kind of looks like. So whenever I edit or do retouching or have requests, I always try to explain to them that I like to keep it as natural as possible, and mention that it represents me and my work, and that my work is A, B, C, and D, and whatever.
Would you ever? I don't know if this would be possible, but do you think photographers should maybe start putting in, if they start doing contracts and things like that, and saying that you can't put? I mean, even if they broke that contract, look, we're photographers, we're not going to go out suing people, I guess. But
no, yeah.
I do empathize with what you said. When you spend time, even if it's minimal edits, it's still your time. It's still your voice, your photographic voice. That someone's just gone, shall I have that filter,
Yeah.
that? And I wish there was more protection for photographers, but maybe that's just the world we live in now.
Yeah. I'm sure some photographers do. I mean, I've seen some contracts, especially working in the wedding world, where they say the image can't be manipulated, which, that doesn't mean you can't put a filter on it, but at least that protects you from someone like heavily retouching your image, which I think is fair, as long as it's not too crazy far from what I sent you, then, you can let it slide. But I definitely know there's a few photographers that will put, you can't add a filter or manipulate the image. And I think that's a great way to say it. And then adding, like, if you want me to edit anything, let me know and we can talk about it, which is what I like to do. And I always, tell my clients, I'm like, I'm totally open to hearing like your thoughts. Like if you think something needs to be darker or brighter, less contrast or something like that, I'm like, just let me know and we can see what's best. Because sometimes people do have, I've gotten requests and they're like, oh, can you do this? I'm like, oh yeah, it actually does look better. Thank you.
That's good. And I think that's an important point that you make there, because ego is a very poisonous thing at times. And, that's not to say that photographers should always go with what the client says, but I think, sometimes people can come in with a fresh perspective, client or photographer. And it's important that we're able to go, do you know what, you're right. Yeah. You're right on this one, because the benefit there is the image benefits, the client's happy, and as photographers, we're always still learning as well. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, I agree.
In terms of your documentary work, there's documentary photography. It's very nuanced. There's everyone's got their own interests and what they're passionate about and what they want people to know about. Right now, in this moment, what aside from the kind of personal project you're doing on yourself, like what's important to you? What's important to you, and what do you want to show through your photography for people to pay attention to in the world?
Yeah. I would say, I mean, at first, I really was, I loved going to the New York Pride Parade just because I thought we were really blessed to be able to have the opportunity to go out there and represent and see other people representing and just like being in the community. And just like, it was like just a day full of love and everyone was just felt like free and expressing themselves. And I guess overall, that's what's important to me. I just love showcasing that idea of like people being able to be free, and doing, showing their beliefs and statements and kind of what's going on in the world. And also just like expresses a lot of my opinions, because by me going to the NYC Pride Parade and taking pictures, like, and putting it on my website, that means you know where I stand. If I'm going to the Black Lives Matter protest and I'm taking those pictures, I'm capturing that moment, I put it on my website, and you know where I stand with that. Like, I'm not just doing it for fun or getting paid to go out there and do it. I'm doing it because it's happening right now in the world. And so I think just expressing my own opinion, but also giving other people the opportunity to show their expression, and capturing those moments is probably the best way I can put it. But I also just love going out there, and like I said, when I first started loving street photography, I would just go out and like take pictures of what's happening around me. And I guess what it is, it's about sharing the story that I want to share, that, you know, what I see and what I want to share. Because I was really excited to be living in New York, and everything was like so fresh and new to me. So it was just, and I knew like every single minute of New York, there was always something going on. So it was just exciting to go out there and like see what I can capture, even if it's just like the clouds looking really pretty over the Empire State Building. I'm like, this will never happen again in this exact same way.
Yeah.
So.
And just going from what you said it was a chance for us to represent. Are you part of the LGBT community?
I'm not, but I have a
Yeah,
lot.
no, okay, no.
Yeah, I just have.
I was
a lot
wondering
of
if that was your
friends.
inspiration. That's all.
Yeah, no, no. I just have had a lot of friends, and I think, you know, I went to an all-girls school in high school, and it was Catholic. So I think growing up, and also my parents were pretty religious, so it was there floating, but I didn't, you know, coming to New York is when I finally felt like, oh, like people can really, you know, be whatever they want and do whatever they want here. And I kind of found, even though I'm not part of the community, I found that kind of liberating, I guess, because of my own background and with just like race issues and stuff. I was like, oh, like it's nice to be able to be yourself and not to be judged for it. And I love to see just that openness of it. So I guess it relates in a sense, even though I'm not in the community, and just like seeing friends coming out in college and just even later on in life, it just kind of felt liberating on my end.
I think, you know, I've not been there for a while, but you know, I'm from England, and I shot a lot of the prides in London.
Nice.
It was my best friend's gay, and he took me to the first Pride event. And whilst it's important to, you know, we're sending a message, because there is still homophobia and xenophobia of all types. So we are sending a message. But aside from the kind of important thing, it's just a cool place to make pictures, right? Because you've got people, you know, and some people disagree even within the community about how far some of these parades go, especially in public. But you know, for me, you get to see things you don't see every day in terms of dress, in terms of just people being happy, and in many ways, I don't know how it is in New York, but although it's still very much for the LGBTQ community, you see a lot of heterosexual couples there just expressing their love.
Oh yeah,
and it just after it, although there's kind of that thing in the back of the head of why Pride started. Yeah, I think now it's like I leave them when I last did them, and I'm like, what a great day that was.
Yeah, exactly, 100%.
So you've been in New York for how long now?
11 years.
11 years. And you're right, it's a great place to shoot, and it's a place to shoot a lot. I mean, I spent 2 months there, and I couldn't stop making images. And I know it's quite a little bit of time, but if you could put into words, like, how do you think you have evolved as a photographer since rocking up at New York 11 years ago to kind of the present moment?
Oh yeah, I mean, I feel like I've developed tremendously, and it's kind of crazy, but honestly, it happened recently was when it was just like that huge jump for me. I think I was always kind of not to say I wasn't pushing myself, but I was kind of holding myself back from jumping into it out of fear of not knowing what's gonna happen, or am I gonna get gigs or get clients. But I think with New York, the greatest thing was the connections that I built here, because I think without those connections, I don't know if I would have made it this far. And I mean, I definitely love that about New York, because you can literally network so much out here. And if you really, really try, you can network like to the grandest. I'm more of an introvert though, so I think it was very hard for me to like go to different galleries and talk to people. But just even coming to college in New York, when I graduated and just started, getting more work, a lot of the connections that I gained in college, and then just like living here and staying here and not moving. So people would come and leave, and they'd come back and be like, "Hey, I'm back, and I have a friend who's getting married. Do you want to be the photographer?" Like little things like that. And I think I don't know. I was just very blessed to have all the connections that I've gained in New York, which definitely helped to push me to be better. But also just constantly taking photos and not being scared to share them, because I feel like no one can see your work unless you show them your work.
Was there a time when you were scared to share them?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And pretty recently too. Like I was very like, I'd share a few things, or like I post something and then like erase it a day later because I'm like, oh, I don't like this. But I think after a while, I reached a point where I was just like, I don't care, and I'm just gonna share what I want to share. Like if it makes me feel good, I'm just gonna, share it, and whoever will appreciate it will appreciate it. And those are the people I want to attract anyways, as my clients and as people that want to support me. And so I kind of just like push myself out there. But also in New York, there's so many other photographers. So I definitely try to network with not only just regular people, but photographers as well, just to see how they're working, if they're looking for assistance, or just to learn from them, to see how they're kind of working themselves in the field, which has helped a lot as well.
Which photographers would you credit for kind of being the most influence on you throughout that time that you've been kind of grinding and working up?
Yeah. Well, the wedding photographer I worked for a long time, his name is Ira Lipke. And I think him and everyone that has worked under his studio has really shaped who I am today, to be honest. He was an amazing photographer, one, and everyone that worked for him and with him were amazing photographers and creators, and just also on the production end. And they taught me a lot of my editing skills, and just like being on set and talking with clients and being more professional and owning a business as well. So he's definitely shaped a lot of my work. And also he was one to like see a blurry photo and be like, I like that. He's like, that's a 5-star image. And I'm just like, oh yeah, like it doesn't have to be a perfect photo to be like, and in other people's eyes it might be, but if you think a photo is good, you think a photo is good. You can make it, as artistic as you want. And recently I've been working with photographer Ali Halloway, and she's been great. And she's been very, she's trying to push me forward. She works not on weddings, but more like on set, like for magazines or brands, etc. So that's been like a whole different world that I was able to jump into. And she's very, supportive and wanting to help other people build. Because I find that some photographers can be, they don't want to share certain things with you, or they don't really want to help you to move up. They just like want you to assist, do your job, and then get out. But she's been very like, if you have any, always open to answer any questions, which is amazing to have someone that you can like call up and just be like, hey, like I'm working this opportunity and I'm just worried about my lighting setup, for example. Like having that person to talk to that knows more than you do, and is willing to share that with you and help you and have your back has been really great. But yeah.
It's amazing. And I think you raise a good point there, and something that any young photographer should pay attention to. That gems like the two that you mentioned are not always easy to find. Mm-hmm. And when you do find them, you have to hold on to them as best you can, because there are a lot of people who do want to just kind of keep you where they think you belong, you know.
Yes.
Oh no, I need you for this. This is where you are. And then you've got those who will make you fall in love with your work by telling you something like a blurry image can be a 5-star, which is true. and someone who, when, hey, you know, I've got a bit of a predicament here, I need some experienced advice, that is always like, yeah, I'll give you what you need.
Yeah.
You know, they're real gems. Speaking of wedding photography, I don't know if you heard this story, but I want to take your opinion on it. There was I can't remember where I read it, but there was a photographer. She was more of a hobbyist, but she knew what she was doing. And her friend's boyfriend or fiance asked her to do the wedding because they didn't have much money, and I think they offered her $250. And she goes, you know, they're friends, you only live once. Yeah, she agrees, right? And she gets there, and what she thought was going to be like a 3-hour thing quickly became an all-dayer. And then with the then fiance, husband, all on the same day, I guess, saying, if you don't do this extra, we're not going to pay you. So she got the camera.
No.
She showed him the camera. She deleted all the images from that day and just walked out.
Oh my God.
What do you think about that?
Wow. I mean, it sounds pretty fair to me. I definitely don't think I would have stayed if they were to ask me that same scenario. And I do find that a lot of people maybe slightly take advantage of photographers, or, you know, people are like, oh, like, that's easy. Or, like, you know, even with friends, like, if a friend or someone that you know is throwing something or doing something, they're like, oh, I want to hire your photographer. And some people won't even ask you what your rates are. And I'm just like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, I can do it. But here's the link to my rates because this is my job.
Yeah.
And, you know, and of course, like, doing stuff, I definitely help out my closest friends, like 100%. But I definitely think that people look at photography and they don't think that it's worth a certain amount of money, or that it's worth your time and all that other things. And I'm like, this is your wedding. I'm like, these moments only happen once, and you're hiring someone to capture these moments. And so I think there's a line that shouldn't be crossed. Like, if you want someone to stay over a certain amount of time, and like you want to threaten them for their money and wasting their time, like, I think that's kind of disrespectful, and I wouldn't want to stay there for that, or care to capture their day anymore at that point, because now my experience is ruined.
Yeah, and they're not friends. If you treat a friend like that, they're not friends. But you know, it's interesting because with mates rate, that's what we call it, mates rate. It always seems to be the creative that has to give up something rather than the consumer. But, you know, if we're mates, why not just pay me my rate? Because you want, and I get it, our closest friends, you know, we want to help them out. But you do make a good point. Sometimes it's a bit like there's an expectation just because they know you, that it's like, oh, well, why don't you just not pay rent this month? Why don't you know? And it's so.
Yeah, I think people just recently started to really acknowledge that photography is a career, like it's a business, like it's something that you pay for, and it's not just like $10, you know. Which
is insane that they're just realizing that, because if every single photographer on the planet right now said no more, just if we stop for even half a day, the world would just it is so influential, so important.
Absolutely, yeah.
For information, for memories, for nostalgia, for business, you name it. Take away photography.
Right.
I want to swear, but I'm not gonna.
I know. So many apps, like Instagram, would be out of business.
Yeah, Instagram would be out of business.
Yeah.
You know, all these Instagram photographer model thingies would be out of business. Thingies, that's not the right term, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So what do you think the future looks like for you? What do you want to do photography wise? Do you have some goals that you're kind of in the short term and long term thinking about?
I have thought about it. It's been hard to say because I feel like things started picking up so fast that I'm kind of in a mode where I'm like trying to fix whatever happened during, the pandemic and COVID, and kind of just doing things, trying to just stay in the business and keep the business going. So it's been hard to really think about what's next, but sometimes I do think about it, and I think I would continue being a freelancer for sure, but I would love to book maybe bigger clients, like brands that I really love and admire too, or artists that I really look up to. Just getting noticed, I guess, by more influential, bigger beings and people in the world that I would love to work with. Like magazines, being in print, being published more, things like that, are just little goals that I want to set for myself.
I have no doubt that that will happen. I mean, I think you've got a very, very authentic and recognizable take on photography.
Thank you.
And I think if you keep just doing what you're doing and wrestle with that inner introvert and
Yes. Exactly.
keep doing what you got to do, then you'll get there. Camera's gone off right at the last minute. That's the beauty of what we're doing. I'm going to put some links to you in the comment section, and I'm not going to your website and Instagram. I've got all them. I'm not going to tell you to tell people them because people will just forget. So if I put the links in, I'm sure people will come to find you. I'll ask you to stay on with me after we've finished. But as far as this podcast comes, I'm happy that you sat down and spoke with me. I appreciate it, and I know that the listeners will have enjoyed this last hour or so of conversation.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure as well. I was hesitant because of my introvert side, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to go for it. So thank you.
No, absolutely. Good for you. Thank you. All right. Well, you take care.
You too. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much to Yeka for speaking with us. If you want to check out more of her work and keep up to speed with what she's doing, then check out the links in the comment section below, and you can get in touch with her via her socials, her website, and keep up to date with everything that's going on in her world. I'd like to thank you again for listening, and remember guys, if you are enjoying the podcast, then please do subscribe and share, hit a comment and a like, and we can keep bringing this to you every single week. Come back next week for another episode of the Phoblographer's Inside the Photographer's Mind. See ya!